Hey everyone, Mark here. Welcome back to the Visually Stunning Movie Podcast. You know, there's been a lot of things happening, a lot of movies coming out, and Ryan and I have talked about them. We are actually this close to having Ryan on video in real time, which is great. But we're getting there. But this week is a little crazy coming up. There is a screening of The Black Phone tomorrow for me, which actually I will not be able to attend because I am having surgery to correct a deviated septum. I know that might be too much information, but that also means I probably won't be talking much or feeling like talking much for at least a few days after that, which sucks. So what I wanted to do was take a chance to talk about some of the littler movies that I've watched here recently and just kind of do a grab bag of stuff. Some of it is indie stuff that's come through my inbox. Some of it is stuff that has, I've caught online. So let's just talk for a second and see what we have. Let's go back a little bit. There's a film called The Righteous. That is about a couple, man and woman, who lost their child. He is a former priest, and he's having trouble dealing with that, his loss of faith, the loss of his child. And then this man shows up wounded outside their house one night, and they bring him inside to take care of him, even though they don't really feel like they should. And he knows things and says things and kind of insinuates himself into their world. And we learn that he obviously is not what he seems to be. He is there for a very specific purpose. And that purpose is to answer the prayer for judgment that the grieving father, former priest, asked for. So it's kind of a psychological thriller. It's kind of a religious treatise on faith and belief, and stuff. The performances are actually really good. So I would recommend you finding that. That is actually, don't let me lie to you now. That is a holy terror film. And it released digitally on June 10th, so you should be able to find it pretty much anywhere. Again, it's called The Righteous, and it is actually pretty darn entertaining if you want kind of a thoughtful examination of psychology and religious mythology and all of that good stuff, and grief. If you're a parent, you definitely understand grief and how your child can impact that. So there is also a film I watched. It was a documentary called Stus Show, and it is about Stu, who probably runs the first freaking web podcast, TV show, internet show ever. But he got his start with I Love Lucy. He's like the Lucille Ball scholar. He knows everything about Lucille Ball and her early career and the early years on the show, and then her second show and her third show and her eighth show. And he just kind of worked his way up from this page handing out free tickets to tapings of the show, to working on the shows, to knowing her, to her getting him. I mean, it's an incredible documentary. And with the release of Being the Ricardos last year and the Lucy and Desi other documentary that showed up, Stu's Show is actually a really great documentary from that point of view. But it morphs halfway through into an examination of Stu's life with his wife when she becomes ill. So it takes this weird left turn and remains just as incredibly engaging a documentary, because in the end you have to remember that this is Stu's show, not the Lucille Ball documentary. So it's about Stu. So we see his life up through all of that, and then he meets his wife and gets married and all this medical. It's a really impressive product that has been put together to examine this one guy's life and how much he does outside of just talking about this stuff in terms of preservation of materials and whatnot. It's if you're into film and film preservation and old stuff, and it's just a really kind of wide ranging look at this guy's life, and all of the things that he's managed to do with it. And in the end, you get angry when he gets angry about certain things, and you're happy when that happens. It's just really, really wonderfully done. And I'm really glad that the folks over at October Coast PR had slid that through my inbox at one point. Now that's been out since May, the beginning of May. So you definitely should be able to find it digitally. So you shouldn't have any trouble. Again, it's called Stus Show, STU' show. There's a film called, I don't even want to talk about that one, so we're not going to talk about that one. Let's talk about something that is worth watching. I wrote the review on this, but I feel like I should mention it here, and it is a documentary called We Are the Thousand. And it is about a group of people in Italy who want to try to convince the Foo Fighters to come and do a concert. This is a few years back. And so to get their attention, the guy has a brainstorm to get 1,000 musicians to play one Foo Fighters song all at the same time. If you think about the logistics of that, it is mind-boggling to have, 150, 200 drummers, 300 guitar players, a bunch of bass players, and then all of these vocalists, all trying to not sound like a mob of drunken soccer fans singing Learn to Fly. Now, it is totally worth watching for that, to watch how that works. Because it's a military operation. It's just incredible. And then you get to see the reaction by the Foo Fighters, by the world, when the video of this gets released. And you may have seen it, and because it's got 100 bajillion hits on YouTube. And then what happens to the 1,000 after that? How that continues on. So We Are the 1,000 is just a really awesome look at fandom, and music, and how music can bring people together, because the 1,000 that they get, they all walks of life, all ages, men, women, boys, girls, kids, adults, grandparents, rockers, classical people. It's so worth watching from that standpoint. That again, I know I wrote it, but you might not have read it. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, what is 24 frames per second for 3.5 minutes of a song worth? It's priceless. And the experience of watching it was absolutely priceless. And I'm so glad I did it. I like the Foo Fighters already. I like them even more, even though they really had nothing to do with this. But I maybe appreciate them a little more than I had before, even though I did already appreciate them. So that is We Are the 1,000. It may still be playing in theaters. It was in theaters at the beginning of June. You know how movies like that are, but you can probably find it online as well. But I highly recommend it. No, okay. On Netflix, there's a film called Disappearance at Clifton Hill, and they're kind of selling it as this, House on Haunted Hill, that kind of vibe. But it's about a girl who, as a child, thinks she sees a boy being kidnapped, but no one believes her, and she likes to lie. So she has issues, but she comes back home to Canada after her mom dies to take care of closing the motel that her mom ran. But she's forced to deal with this memory and occurrence again, and try to convince her sister that she's not insane, and the police that she's not insane. It's an interesting little diversion. It's about 1:45. It plays longer than that, but not in a bad way. You always feel like you're learning things. there wasn't a lot of slow parts in this to slow it down. But you watch it and you're right there and you're like, yeah, 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 yeah. And it gets to the end and it gives you just enough of a curveball where you're like, wait. And so for that made all the rest of it even more worthwhile. So again, Disappearance at Clifton Hill on Netflix. I recommend checking that one out as well. And then the other night, for some reason, in this house, we needed something of a little lighter fare than I'd been watching of late. And so I jumped on Hulu and found Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar. Now this was a festival darling, and now it's on Hulu. It's got Kristen Wiig, Jamie Dornan. I gotta tell you, I liked it, but I don't like it as much as I could have. There are parts in this film where I think they just went too far in the wackadoodle direction. They could have dialed some stuff back. They could have cleaned some stuff up, but it detracts from what is just kind of like this really solid fish out of water / wrong place, wrong time kind of story with Barb and Star leaving their little home and traveling to Vista Del Mar for vacation and getting involved in certain things. It's not a bad film. I do recommend you watch it, but I think that it would have been a lot better had they not gone certain ways or certain depths into certain things. They could have dialed it back. They really should have cleaned it up. Really entertaining film. And now, to wrap this up, if you're watching the video of this, and I hope you are on YouTube, I watched Dragon Knight. Now, if you're not watching, if you hear that rattle, that means that's the DVD in the case, because I bought it because it was very cheap, and I got I knew what I was getting into. Don't think I was fooled by this incredible cover art. Let me read some of it. Above the title, on the swords, axes, bows, and dragons. That sounds promising, right? If you're a fan. And at the bottom of the cover, the perfect fix for the Lord of the Rings fans. If you're a Lord of the Rings fan, you'll see a lot of things that you know. Synopsis. When a malevolent force takes hold in the kingdom of Aganos, a lone knight must embark on a perilous quest to find the last dragon and save the world from this great and growing evil. That is a solid fantasy premise. That is a solid fantasy premise. And as it's executed in the film, is still a solid fantasy premise. But I don't know what the budget for this was. It did have a budget, however, because there are a lot of people in armor and period clothing that really look like they came right out of medieval recreation businesses that you can get, because the evil troops tend to be carrying around Roman legionnaires' shields, those large curved boxes. And most of the good guys in the one kingdom we're done with are all wearing Crusader helms, if you're familiar with the Crusader look. So it is about the Dragon Knight, not about the dragon. So we follow the Dragon Knight around as he goes and finally does, in fact, spoiler alert, find the last dragon and has to convince him to help fight this evil. Again, it's a solid premise, limited mostly by budget, and we get to the end. It's not the worst CGI dragon I've ever seen. I can tell you that. It is definitely not the worst CGI dragon I've ever seen. It's actually, it's kind of a nice design. It's pretty nice. It's still a little too clean for what I want my CGI dragon to look like. So they actually needed to dirty him up a little bit. One of the characters is really, really annoying they really wanted some comedy relief. And they let him go all the way up to where he was. which was too much most of the time. But the role he was playing was necessary. I just think he's depicted poorly. There is a not romance in here where maybe a lesser film might actually have acted on this, what they kind of lay out as a romantic interest, but this film doesn't. So kudos to them for not just taking the easy way out, even though you see a lot of the things coming up to those points. In the end, if you've been listening to the Visually Stunning Movie Podcast for any length of time, you know that I have watched some terrible movies in my life. This is not the most terrible film that I've ever watched, but it is far from the best fantasy film that I have ever seen. You will, again, if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, you'll recognize a lot of the tropes that Tolkien made so plentiful. And again, there's some stuff to like, but it is exactly what you might think it would be. It is not as good as Dragonheart with Dennis Quaid and Sean Connery, but it is probably better than all of the sequels to Dragonheart. How about that? So there you go. That's just a look at some of the stuff I've been watching over the last couple weeks, while Ryan and I have desperately been trying to line up our schedules to record the larger big budget Hollywood tentpole films, which you've gotten most of those. There are a few more that we do want to talk about. We still have to talk about Elvis, which comes out next week, and hopefully we will do that soon. We want to talk about Crimes of the Future, David Cronenberg. Yeah, that's something to talk about. So, speak of the devil. That's Ryan. Let's see. Okay. Looks like we'll be recording in 3 or 4 days. So, there you go. That's what we've got going with Ryan. But we'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about the end of Kenobi, because the Kenobi finale is in 2 days. We'll probably catch up because the 3rd episode of Ms. Marvel is also on Wednesday, so we'll be able to maybe go into a little more depth on that. And then probably talk about, again, we still need to talk about Elvis and some other stuff, but we're getting there. It's coming, and we're really looking forward to it. And hopefully we've got some more things on tap for you to listen and watch soon. So till we get back to you, take it easy. Don't forget to like us and follow us on social media at VS Movie Podcast. You know how that works. If you're watching this mug on YouTube, click subscribe, click like. That would be awesome as well. And until we talk to you again, take it easy, everyone. Bye-bye.